Symbolic History Through Sight and Sound, 1700, The Comic Divide. The divide of 1710, from the heroic and rational Baroque to the mock-heroic and wistful Rococo, is peculiarly the comic divide, since those opposites, assertive fullness and ironic play, suggest the blending poles of comedy itself, exuberance and mockery. Typical that grandeur and ridicule so meet in both styles that the change from Louis XIV to Regency, as from Cartesian command to Berkeleyan subjectivity, seems merely a change of emphasis. What else informs historical contrasts but subtle shifts of stress between wedded contraries? When Rigaud's 1701 Sun King steps from his throne, as to the supple music of Delalande, the trailing vast fleur-de-lis robe raised on aging cork-heeled legs, already his vanity in Testelin's portrait 53 years before, that heroic proclamation, not throne, not crown, but self, l'état, c'est moi, bears the burlesque of Van Broek's 1696 Lord Foppington. Mr. Mendlegs, a word with you. The calves of my stockings are thickened a little too much. They make my legs look like a chairman's. Let the next be the thickness of a crown piece less. If the town takes notice my legs are fallen away, 'twill be attributed to the violence of some new intrigue. Yet the break at Louis XIV's death in 1715, from Pomp's overreach to the precise wit of Watteau, is one of the sharpest in history. In drama, the softening from Molière to the delicious sentiments of Marivaux, a game of love and chance. In music, from Lully and Delalande to Couperin's plaintive concerts, the first, in fact, written to soothe the ailing king's last years. Thus in England the fragile ironies of Pope's 1714 Rape of the Lock, Belinda still her downy pillow pressed, her guardian sylph prolonged the balmy rest. 'Twas he had summoned to her silent bed the morning dream that hovered o'er her head, a youth more glittering than a birthnight bow, that even in slumber caused her cheek to glow, seemed to her ear his winning lips to lay, and thus in whispers said, or seemed to say, fairest of mortals, thou distinguished care of thousand bright inhabitants of air. That Pope succeeds Dryden, 1685, Threnodiar Augustalis. A warlike prince ascends the regal state, a prince long exercised by fate. False heroes made by flattery so, heaven can strike out like sparkles at a blow. But ere a prince is to perfection brought, he costs omnipotence a second thought. What can so swell the heroic tympanum but the birth of precious ridicule, mutation of buoyancy and disenchantment? By the end of Louis's reign, a France ruined by extravagance and war was in the hands of such tax farmers as the forthright Le Sage shows us in Turcaret. I marvel at the course of human life. We pluck a coquette, the coquette devours a man of affairs, the man of affairs pillages others, and all this makes the most diverting chain of knaveries imaginable, un ricochet de bourberie le plus plaisant du monde. Langillaire's 1696, devout magistrates of Paris cloak the travesty of that ricochet. No wonder, 24 years later, in Watteau's shop of Jacin, the wigged Virtue of the old Louis, painted by Lebrun and acclaimed by Molière at the close of Tartuffe. We live under a prince wise in the ways of the world, whose great soul sees the truth through every mask, whose steadfast reason admits of no excess. That pomp is stowed in straw in a packing case, from which the painter himself beckons a nostalgic beauty. Thus, at the close of the School of Manners, Molière's France began. Sheridan's improvident auctions the stern portraits of his family past. As in Johnson's Vanity of Human Wishes, from every room descends the painted face that hung the bright palladium of the place. For now no more we trace in every line heroic worth, benevolence divine. The form distorted justifies the fall, and detestation rids the indignant wall. But what if with the picture normative reason should be deposed, ushering in the passionate successor? High comedy is a type and mirror of purposive aim. In every act of purpose, as when we reach for something, the central thrust is trained on its goal by a feedback correction of misses. So in the comic antinomy, Dionysian release, breaking tame symmetry in a dance of the grotesque, takes the blaze of corrective mockery, by which its overflow is guided home, from Aristophanes to Twain and Chaplin, ironic mantle of generative force. In the gargantuan Renaissance, the poles seem to fuse in windmill assault or Falstaffian celebration. In the social comedy of method, from Molière to Austen, reason separates a truth core, etched round with the acid of vanity and hypocrisy scorned. Velasquez's 1628 praise of Bacchus and castigation of drunk peasants straddles the line, at once quixotic and normative. When Bernini's 1650 Duke of Este had proclaimed over Europe the code and canon of reasoned grandeur, what were all those courtly aspirants, with their art and stage reflections, to do, but assume the stance of that saltimbanque nobility? Dryden's Alexander, none but the brave deserves the fair. In France, the bourgeois gentilhomme, Monsieur Jourdain, preposterously apes. In England, the Dorrimants and Bel-Airs, Harcoots, Melifonts, Mirabelles, who pace the Restoration stage, though of course the manly centre will be rimmed. With the misses and exaggerations of Sir Fopling Flutter, Sir Novelty Fashion, Sparkish, Lord Frost, Tattle, Whitwood, Petulant. Is it not thematic that the man who schemed the ultimate inflation, Bernini, also and at the same time invented its caricature, the very idol in this French cavalier, pricked and deflated by comic scorn? Perhaps the heroic has always occasioned playful divisions on its ground. From Sosa and Kaffa to Tut and this Ramses II, the enthroned pharaoh was the image of power, as epic for Egypt as Homer's warriors for the Greeks. But when, in tomb paintings of the same 19th dynasty, the same judgment seat, secures for a royal mouse the service of a cat, we recall those Iliad parodies once ascribed to Homer, the battle of frogs and mice, in which Aristotle found the comic source, how mice armed with beanpot greaves and peanut helmets attacked the frogs armed with rushes and snail shells until the myrmidon crabs intervene. Now, as the epic mode revives, the takeoffs also stake a claim. Cervantes, scarce had Aurora displayed her rosy graces to mortal eyes from the gates and balconies of the Manchegan horizon, when the renowned knight Don Quixote forsook the voluptuous down. Or under Baroque hardening, Tassoni's 1622 Rape of a Bucket, a Bolognese assault on Modena, in which they make horrible war for a bucket and go back home in triumph and racket. Fanno per una secchia orribil guerra e tornan trionfanti a lor terra. A model in Dryden's England for Hudibras, and then, as the title reveals, for Pope's Rape of the Lock. Compare Pope's mock heroics with this fresco Domenichino painted for the Aldobrandini, the negligence and punishment of their dwarf before a simulated tapestry of Apollo and the Cyclops. Pope, not louder shrieks to pitying heaven are cast, when husbands or when lapdogs breathe their last, or when rich china vessels fallen from high in glittering dust and painted fragments lie. If earthly exultance is a ground of laughter, even the religious Baroque must surge that way, as in the formal leaps of Benevoles et Resurrexit, or the dome and volutes of La Salute, everywhere on the point of overplaying such magnificent powers. Pious exuberance denying mockery. Carissimis Deum de Deo from the Mass for 5 and 9 takes up the dance of Bernini's High Altar or Guarini's Turin Domes. Which carries to the end of the century in Pozzo's Ignazio ceiling, or in the Christmas concerto of Corelli. It fills the Spain of the organist Cabanillas with Churriguera's altars. And crowns Indian Mexico with the gold of earth conquest. From Rome and Venice, the power of high Baroque strikes north over the Danube, rearing as to the festal pomp of Biber's St. Polycarp Sonata, the imperial monastery of Melk. Though German music at this Melk turn of the century peaks 400 miles to the north in the fugal toccatas of Buxtehude. A sacred abundance flooding over the century, through the lifetime of Bach. Hear Azam's boisterous ascent of Mary from tomb to angel light, Magnificat. What should the courts be, where religion has become the buoyant opera of material praise? In Dutch Lely, fad of the English court after Van Dyck, Bernini's Duke of Este, sire's manly virtue thinning into mannered dress, Etheridge, 1676. Next to the coming to a good understanding with a new mistress, I love a quarrel with an old one. Wycherley's Horner, who has himself declared impotent, as from something caught in France, that his cuckolds may not suspect him, Lady Fidget. Could you be so generous, so truly a man of honour, as for the sakes of us women of honour, to cause yourself to be reported no man, and to suffer yourself the greatest shame that could fall upon a man, that none might fall upon us women by your conversation? But indeed, sir, as perfectly the same man as before your going into France, sir, as perfectly, sir. Though the loving country wife almost explodes everything, her jealous husband is being assured of Horner's impotence. Why, thou jealous fool, dost thou doubt it? He's an arrant French capon. The country wife. 'Tis false, sir. You shall not disparage poor Mr. Horner, for to my certain knowledge— Oh, hold, stop her mouth, upon my honour, sir. The lie prevails. Cuckolds, like lovers, should themselves deceive. In that field, Molière's good is moderation. The rigid virtue of the ancient sages is out of key with present usages. Like the nature Boileau says art should follow, it is style, groomed by wit. And yet it overweens, Molière with La Gillière. Men never will keep to the golden mean. They will spoil and pervert a noble aim by exaggeration, carrying things too far. The cosmetic arts of Pope's beautiful Belinda are those Congreve marvellously misapplies to the earthquaked old face of Lady Wishforit, that antidote to desire, so prone to the iteration of nuptials. As Erasmus Folly had said, they pluck out hairs from the strangest places, they display their withered and foul breasts. Lady Wishforit. He has put me out of all patience. I shall never recompose my features to receive Sir Rowland with any economy of face. This wretch has fretted me, that I am absolutely decayed. Look, Foible. Foible. Your ladyship has frowned a little too rashly indeed, madam. There are some cracks discernible in the white varnish. Lady Wishforit. Let me see the glass. Cracks, sayest thou? Why, I am errantly flayed. I look like an old peeled wall. Thou must repair me, Foible, before Sir Rowland comes, or I shall never keep up to my picture. What Lady Wishforit is to the bell, the fop is to the bow. We approach the type wherever baroque might decks a puny centre, as with poor sickly Charles II of Spain. On the English stage it is as if Shakespeare's waterfly Osric did comply with his dug before they sucked it, had absorbed with the exiled court of St. James the preciosities of Molière's France, to become Etheridge's surfopling flutter. He went to Paris a plain, bashful English blockhead, and is returned a fine, undertaking French fop. He thinks himself the pattern of modern gallantry. He is indeed the pattern of modern foppery. He was yesterday at the play with a pair of gloves up to his elbows, and a periwig more exactly curled than a lady's head, newly dressed for a ball. What a pretty lisp he has! Oh, that he affects in imitation of the people of quality of France. His looks are more languishing than a lady's when she leans her head carelessly against the side of a box in the playhouse. By the end of the century, La Guyère's magistrates vie with Vanbrook's Lord Foppington. Gad's curse, Mr. Foretop, you don't intend to put this upon me for a full periwig? Foretop. Why, as God shall judge me, your honour's side face is reduced to the tip of your nose. My side face may be an eclipse for aught I know, but I'm sure my full face is like the full moon. Heaven bless my eyesight, and please your honour, the broadest place I see in your face does not seem to me to be 2 inches in diameter. If it did, it would be just 2 inches too broad, for a periwig to a man should be like a mask to a woman. Nothing should be seen but his eyes. My lord, I have done. If you please to have more hair in your wig, I'll put it in. Positively, yes. Shall I take it back now, my lord? No, I'll wear it today, though it show such a monstrous pair of cheeks. Stab my vitals, I shall be taken for a trumpeter. In Molière, vigour is less lost under the mannered wig. He is closer to the mid-century realism of the North, the clean fugues of Petzel. That comic play, as in Jan Steen's No Medicine for Love, rides a grandeur of ordered space. Such Molière's absolute clarity of character and action, against which Restoration drama blurs its complexities of plot and person. Yet Molière transcends the realism of the small masters. As La Fontaine wrote, under this stone where Molière lies alone, Plautus and Terence lie, 3 dead in 1. So in Le Médecin Malgré Lui, Sganarelle, woodcutter, taken for a physician by the trickery of his wife, fumbles a girl who plays dumb for love. Here is a pulse which denotes that your daughter is dumb. And when father, lover and all pay him, he finds doctoring a good trade. Maybe I'll stick to medicine the rest of my life. For whatever you do, good or bad, you get paid the same. If a cobbler spoils leather, he has to pay. But here, you can spoil a man and it costs you nothing. It's always the fault of the one who dies. You don't hear the dead man complain of the doctor who killed him. In the hypochondriac, there is Purgon's curse at the refusal of his Clister. That in 4 days' time you enter on an incurable state, that you fall into a dyspepsia. Ah, Monsieur Purgon! From a dyspepsia into a dysentery, from a dysentery into a dropsy. Mercy, Monsieur Purgon! From a dropsy into the privation of life, where your folly will bring you. Or the closing chorus of mock doctors in pidgin Latin. Vivat, vivat, forever vivat, novus doctor, et manget, et bibat, et bridet, et killat. By the 18th century, French classical has permeated Dutch realism with its comic themes. The mocking maid through the half-door, her fingers raised to her forehead like horns, tells after what discovery the magisterial husband hides his face, leaving his wife in tears. It is cuckoldry, on which Molière, with a girl actress for sportive bride, tellingly dwells, Arnulf, in the school for wives. I know all the tricks, all the devices that ladies use to victimize their husbands, so I've taken adequate precautions. The girl I'll marry is an innocent, and her simplicity is my protection. While Chrysalde counsels proportion. Why should the actions of a wife determine whether a man is worthy or not of honor? Does breach of trust make him a monster? A gentleman treats cuckoldry with reason, though Trost's print is as mild as 18th century Addison. Whereas Molière's blend of classical balance and rollicking farce is of the high baroque, never rococo, never Watteau light. Lebrun's equestrian chancellor hints at such a comic seriousness, where the formal is real, poetry has wit, state and grandeur wear a mocking, urbane smile. Such aims attend the heroic normalization of verse, which advances in France from Malherbe, English Waller's model, to the swelling periods of Boileau, where a just cadence has reduced the muse to obligatory rules. Une juste cadence réduisit la muse aux règles du devoir. The proof of the achievement is that it could contain Molière's verse plays, Racine's tragedies, and even in Boileau, not simply the reason of his art poétique, but the Pascalian shadow of les folies humaines. Often of all our evils, reason is the worst. Souvent de tous nos maux, la raison est